So, hi, and a warm welcome to everybody today. This is unfortunately our final episode for 2024 on our series about unified service management. But today we're going to be talking about designing your service organization with systems thinking. Now, Blanche is over in the social chat, so please let her know that your name, the city from where you're watching, and it's an interactive event, so get involved in the chat. If you've got any questions for the panel, please feel free. Just enter them into the chat. Our team will get them over to us to answer live while we're in the show. Don't leave it too late. Unfortunately, everybody has a tendency to ask their questions in the last 5 minutes of the show. So get them in as early as you can. Now, services really can only fulfill customer demand systematically if the service provider has organized the delivery of that service in a systematic way. The big question is always, how do we organize our organization? So really, to answer that burning question and all of your questions, we have a wonderful panel of experts today. So I think let's jump right in and meet them. So welcome, everybody. It's great to have you all back on the show again today. It's really, really fun to be doing these USM events. So I think it's really good. Jan, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind, okay, to do your introduction. Now, Jan is an enterprise service management architect, and it's safe to say the author of the USM methodology, with over 100 management books behind him, with thousands of authors and reviewers. In his latest book, Unified Service Management, An Introduction to the USM Method, Jan has summarized well all the lessons learned from the past into a single book. So welcome, Jan. It's great to have you back on the show again.
Yeah, thank you very much. The dark days before Christmas, so we're going to try to shed a lot of light on the concept of organization.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I'd like to welcome back Peter again. Peter Hoekstra is a dedicated trainer, coach, facilitator, and he specializes in enhancing team dynamics and optimizing organizational architecture. And I think, he's been doing this for a long time. And his real specialty is to help organizations bridge gaps and improve efficiency. So welcome back, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to today's special session about system thinking, and I hope that we can bring the message across, because it's a fundamental thing in unified service management. Looking forward.
It absolutely is. And welcome back again to Mikko, who unfortunately missed our last panel. But Mikko is an experienced service management advisor, coach, trainer, and consultant. And I think he likes to take the mystique and mumbo jumbo, as he says, out of service governance and management. So welcome back again, Mikko.
Thanks, Nigel. And my principle is always hang out with the smarter guys than you yourself are. And here it really happens. It's nice to be here again, hanging around with smarter guys.
Really great to have you again. And John, it's always a pleasure, my friend, to have you here. John's got over 40 years experience in IT industry, spanning over 2 decades in sales, business development, and the tech side of things, service management. So welcome back again, John.
Thanks, Nigel. Glad to be here, and happy holidays, everybody.
Yes, definitely. Happy holidays. Sonke has over 20 years experience, and I think this is his second appearance on the panel. So really great to have you back. And he's been at the forefront of IT service management and really demonstrated a strong commitment to elevating service cultures within diverse organizations, empowering them to lead their own cultural shifts, which really, when I hear what I'm saying here, is a lot about change management in this, Sonke. So welcome back again.
Thank you very much. Yes, I found the right combination between service culture and right approach to service management, and I'm glad to be here again.
Fantastic. So I just want to give a warm welcome to all of our viewers. We've got tons of people online watching at the moment. Thanks for joining us, If. We've got Renee Fisser online as well. So hi, Renee. Really good to have you online. Frank is with us as well, and Pasi from Sweden. It's really good to have the Scandinavian countries represented, and some people from Germany, Sasha, and a special welcome to Esther, who has been on this panel a number of times. So we're hoping for lots of questions from you, Esther. Pop them in. So lots and lots of people, and also Jane, welcome from the UK. It's really good to see you online. There's so many people, it's difficult to go through everybody. But last one, Dennis, really good to have you here from all the way from Montreal. Okay, just remember, everybody, get your questions in. If you have any questions for us, for the panel, as we start to go through things, I'm sure they'll come to you. All right, so let's take a look at our first question. Our first question for today is a very simple one. It is, what is systems thinking? So, Jan, I'm going to start with you, but I'm going to give you a diagram to help along with this.
Those are the laws the two main laws of system thinking. That's a great image. I've been taking a deep dive into system thinking for a long time, and I've read about many of the authors of the whole concept of system thinking. But there's one guy that stands out in this, and that's Professor Russell Ackoff. Because I think in all the authors about this theme, he's been the one who has been able to simplify the nature of the whole thing. And that's really mastering. If you look at, for instance, Stefan Beer with the viable system model, his followers are still fighting about what he's meaning with that complex image. And Russell Ackoff is really doing a great job. He did a great job because he passed away many years ago in simplifying the ideas. And he came up, and he didn't literally write this down because this is something that I took out of his videos that he left. But he told us that actually system thinking is only based on two main laws. And first of all, the concept of the system. It is something that is composed of essential components that can't do what the other components can, and that can't do what the system can. Mm-hmm. Now, if we apply that to an organization, we will have astonishing results. And the second result, or the second law that he came up with, is that to improve such a system based on essential components, the only way to improve that, to improve its performance, is by improving all the essential components, because you can't miss anyone. For an integrated result, you need to attend to all the essential components. And those two laws will, as you will see, have been of huge influence for the thinking about USM.
Fantastic. I agree. I love that you've taken those out of his videos. Yeah, that's really helpful, actually, for us.
I invite everyone to go to YouTube and just type in Professor Russell Ackoff, and you will be astonished on the valuable content you will run into. It's easy listening to, and he's a great talker. He's full of humor, but he has a great mind.
He is, absolutely. So in fact, for our social chats, maybe Blanche, if you can pop that into the chat for the folks, Dr. Russell Ackoff, because it's really, really good to watch some of his videos. They pop a link into something on YouTube or whatever for the folks watching. Okay, Mikko, I think you wanted to add something to this.
Yeah, I think, well, I need to say what he said, or Jan.
Of course.
So how to actually make something that is so complex as the whole area of systems thinking and put it actually in two basic, very actionable laws. And especially when we talk about service management, we talk about the service organization, and especially from the field of IT service management, and you always start with the technology. And for technology, you have all these architectures and fancy stuff to do it. But I ask a question about all the attendees or anyone listening to this. How many organizations have actually been designed from the day one? So you actually design the organization. Maybe when you find a new company, you make the basic structure and then you forget it. So it's about first a design, and then it's measuring and improving. And how on earth are you going to do that if you are not able to manage the organization in a systematic way? And that's where the systems thinking, looking from the USM approach, it's actually simplify and make it in the simple components. Think about, for example, that you have in any organization, you have a number of small service providers interacting. So there are all the components of that related to each other. The organization is more than its components. It's more than a sum of the components. It's always interacting small service providers, if you wish. So I think that's something absolute. It's deceivingly simple, as one of my mentors said. So again, redesign your organization. And system thinking gives you, in a form of that, and the way USM handles it, it gives you the exact tools to do just that.
Right. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that later on too. But first, we're going to go to John, who's also going to add something here.
Well, yeah, I think systems thinking, it forces us to accept the fact that we can't just improve the people or just improve the system or just improve the process. We have to view these improvements in the context of how these parts work together to deliver value. And of course, the value is the thing that delivers the value is the service. And so this is really easy to say, but it's hard to do organizationally for most companies, especially given the complexity of today's practice frameworks. Again, taking this holistic approach is conceptually understandable, but hard to do, hard to execute operationally for an organization, especially given the current practice frameworks.
Right. Thanks, John. That helps, I think, put it into context for people. Peter, would you like to add something to this?
Well, yes. What I'm thinking about is that there are often two mistakes made when you talk about system thinking. And one is the misunderstanding of the word itself, system. And people start to think about computer systems, but the whole idea is that you focus on the whole organization, for example, or in a medical environment, the whole body. And but you do not focus too much only on the whole organization, but that you zoom into the parts, like Mikko mentioned, the interaction between the components, or to say differently, the relationships. That is so important. And what I like about the beauty of unified service management is that it really focuses on three resources. And we will dive into that later on: people, process, and technology, and that you know how these interact or relate with each other.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. I just want to show you guys here just a little bit. We have a link here. This is to the USM Wiki. I always like to remind people before we go on to talk about much. The USM Wiki is an enormously valuable resource. Scan it with your QR code or just Google USM Wiki, okay, and it'll take you straight to that page. It's enormously helpful. Lots and lots of information in there about the USM method. So as you follow us on, with this series, you'll see we refer back to the USM Wiki quite a lot. Also, just to let you guys know, we were talking about Dr. Russell Ackoff. Systems Thinking by Dr. Russell Ackoff, that's how you spell it. There is a link there. You can maybe take a picture of it with your mobile phone and go there, or just Google, and you'll find all the information about him there. Okay, so very interesting information you'll find. Okay, thank you, team. Let's jump on to our second question. And our second question is, how is systems thinking applied to a service organization? Mikko, why don't you kick us off with this?
Yes, Peter mentioned, so it's about the how we split the any organization in different resources. So usually, especially from a service organization, it's about processes, the logical level. It's about people who actually do the work, and it's about the technology or the tools or whatever we use to actually achieve something in practice. So quite often we start with the technology, so especially in IT service management. So it's just one component or lots of components. They are in itself, inside the technology, you have lots of technical systems, as Peter mentioned, and that are interrelated and integrated with the technical integration, etc. Then you might have, okay, we need define some of the roles that actually use the technology. And then you forget the process. And that has been what we have discussed in the previous panels a lot. But the systems thinking, you can start with the big picture. So, okay, we have interacting processes, people, and technology, and then go inside each one of the resources and see how the components inside of those resources actually interact. So, yeah, we should have a management system discussed in the previous panel. So, taking the account, use the same exact logical approach to manage each and every one of these different resource types. And that's where the systems thinking help. And it's about how do we build logical, actionable, actually working service management system, where the term system is coherent set of components. It's not a technological system. So yeah, that's where you start dissecting your whole thingy, whole service organization. Start with the three resources types, then go inside them and always see how they interact with each other.
I think that's what a lot of people miss, though, Mikko, in organizations. And I think you've probably come across this in your consulting days as well, that people tend to look at each of these three things in isolation, right? They don't necessarily look at all of the interactions that could happen between people, process, and technology. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's exactly so. So it's always the three. So for example, I've been on ERP projects and being kicked out of the room because they were doing the techie stuff. And I was, well, we will run into troubles later on, and we did. So we need to reverse engineer on how to start and then the decisions make on the technology side, looking from the process and people point of views.
Right, which makes sense. I think, John, would you like to add into this if you want to?
Well, I think, when we talk about, we want to take a holistic view of all of these components, right? The 3 Ps. It reminds me that there is a lot of practice guidance that actually increases the number of Ps, 4 Ps, 5 Ps. And, that may be good for a specific context, but generically, 3 Ps keeps it simple, right? And it's easier to manage a system by keeping it simple. And it reminds me of an old article that Forbes wrote I think back in 2022 that said, basically after 60 years, people, process, and product or technology remains a go-to model. And so the simplest way to categorize the resources of any service organization is still people, process, and technology.
Yeah,
They're basic assets of any service provider. So I think USM keeps it simple. Everybody can understand it. Processes are the what, people are the who, products or technologies the how. And we talked about this in an earlier session. So that's what I like about it. Keep it simple. People, process, and technology.
Yep. People, process, technology. Keep it simple. And don't forget the interactions between them. So we'll talk a bit more about that later. Sonke, do you want to jump in here as well?
Yes, please. I wanted to add, as we are talking about simplicity and what is really the need of a service organization is to manage the complexity. And this is where, from my point of view, system thinking comes in because it's logical and it will build an architecture that is reliable. So like all these components that we try to make in simple ways can be interrelated and can be connected. So this will lead from a good design thinking. It must lead to a good service design and design of the service organization. This means how we will get control about all this complex things that we want to keep more in a simple way.
Yeah, agreed. Jan, you would like to add to this?
Yeah, final comment, because the first law of system thinking is clear: process, people, technology, the 3 components. But you just made a comment on that relating to the second law, because the second law says that to improve the performance of the system, you need to involve all 3. And that means specifically that if people are changing their organization, our national hobby is reorganizing, and expect that just by changing the people component, the performance of the whole is changing, they make the biggest mistake ever. If they think that by replacing a tool by another tool without interfering the process and people components, they make the biggest mistake ever. And that's what's happening all over the place.
Absolutely right. I mean, what he said, to quote Mikko, and you've heard it here. Yeah, I've seen this so many times. People think that by replacing people or changing the way people are working or doing something like that, it will change the entire outcome. It doesn't. Yeah, all 3 of these things need to be looked at independently, and then they need to be looked at as a whole. If you don't look at them as a whole and what the interactions are, it doesn't work. So thanks, everyone. Let's take a look at what our next question is. We're getting a couple of live questions come through too. So this question is, a management system provides control. What are USM's main control mechanisms? Jan, I'm going to kick off with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we have specified 2 really important mechanisms to getting control. The whole of USM is a management system that is aimed to help you get in control, but 2 mechanisms are crucial there. The first one is standardization. And standardization, it's kind of a necessary evil. But if you don't standardize to a certain level, you can never set up a supply chain or an ecosystem that has completely solve the interoperability challenges. So to become an interoperable ecosystem, you must have some agreement about your interfacing. And that's what USM did. We agreed on how the interface between the actors in supply chains and ecosystems are specified without interfering with the decision space of the actors. So we're not going to tell the teams or the organizations how to behave, which people to assign, which jobs, and which tools to select or whatever. We're just going to require them to interface in a standardized way with all the other actors in the ecosystem, or it will never work. Now, that's the first and I think the most important control mechanism. And a second, and that's also a hugely important one, is separation of duties. That's the most powerful control for organizational aspects. You cannot be the judge of your own case. We know what happens. So this is a main mechanism. Split up the concept of specifying something and realizing the same thing. Never realize what you have designed, never design what you're gonna realize, because then you will never find the mistakes that you made. So those two concepts are the main USM control mechanisms that we can find.
Love that. Fantastic. Thank you. Sonke, your comments.
Yes, I would like to add on what Jan just said. With the separation of specifying and realizing, we really have like also a very powerful tool. So like one role can focus on the objectives, which things should be achieved, while operators and coordinators are realizing this work in a more efficient way. So like this is how we, in a one way, we get control about the work that has to be done, but also a satisfaction that everything that is done is also visible and can be measured. So like this is like a very good way to use USM in this.
Fantastic. Thank you. John, your thoughts?
Well, I would, again, remind everyone that in prior sessions, we talked about the non-redundant process model and standard workflow. So if you haven't seen those, you should go back and take a look at them, because that's key to our USM's control mechanisms. And the separation of duties, another thing that USM does is it creates this role separation by defining what we call profiles that include tasks, authorities, and responsibilities. And this clarifies, who performs each task. So there's accountability for all routines without any overlap. And we also talked about domain separation, but it allows you to tailor these procedures and work instructions. And again, we talked about this in prior sessions, that allows for separation and as well as practice integration across different service domains.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter. Sorry, John. Peter, I think it's you're up next, right? You wanted to add something?
It's maybe also to emphasize on the separation of the roles, specifying on one hand and realizing on the other hand. Why? To ensure control. You can't be the judge in your own case. So USM explicitly separates these roles and responsibilities to avoid overlaps and to create conflicts. And as you know, USM is process driven. So the separation, you see it also coming back in the process itself. So the process manager specifies his or her role, or say his or her process, and the coordinator and the operator, they dive into the tickets themselves. And in many organizations, it's however often the process manager who specifies, but also acts on doing prioritization and follow-ups on tickets. And then it starts to be gray and fluffy. So it's important to do this separation of duty.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Folks, thank you so much. I think those answers really make sense. Just want to welcome a few more folks. So we've got Inuit here from France. Welcome. Hell, we've got somebody from Warsaw as well. Kanuski, welcome. That's really great to see you here. We've got lots and lots of people. Cesar, really, really good to see. We've got people from Mexico joining as well. We've got to see from India. So really good to see all of you got people joining from all around the globe. This is really becoming a truly global event and phenomenon now. So I think we've represented in today's show large portions of the earth, which is really good to see. So just a reminder as well, as a couple of panelists mentioned, this is the 6th episode in the series. You need to watch them all if you have the opportunity. They're all on our YouTube channel. Don't forget, you can just go to APMG International on YouTube, find them. They're all there. They are really, really fantastic watches, each and every one of them. Start with number 1 if you can. Okay? Really good. It tells you a little bit more about what USM is all about. Okay? And each of the shows are built on that from then on. So please go ahead and do that. Let's jump straight into our next question. And the next question is, how does USM structure the management in this management system? Because I think that's probably going to be one of the burning questions here. So Jan, I'm going to jump in for you first, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, let's first of all agree that management and governance are separated domains. So the first split we make between domains in a systematic way is the difference between the governance and the management. The governance is steering on the management, and the management executes what has been given as a steering goal. And that's a nice image. This is in line with ISO 38500 and all the other governance stuff that you can find. A split between governance and management. So if we're focusing on the system of management, the lower square in this image, then we use the recursive application of the concept of separation of duties within the system. So there's a manager who agrees with all the executive staff on how to do the work. Then there's a coordinator that assigns the tasks that have to be done and that have been agreed to the operator, and the operator is the only one executing the tasks. So this is a simple structure. This is the architecture of the management domain in terms of the people sense, that can be used recursively into any other kind of organization you want to create. You want to create a lot of silos, use this. I don't know why, but you could use it. If you want to create a flat organization, use this once, no more than once. If you want to create a network organization, use this time upon time. You can create steep organizations, flat, anything you want by recursively applying the architecture of the management domain, splitting up the manager who agrees on what needs to be done, the coordinator who assigns tasks that need to be done, and the operator that executes what has been agreed to be done. And that can be done from a number of perspectives that we'll talk about later on.
Fantastic. It makes it look so simple.
It is simple. It is. People
Absolutely,
make it difficult.
All right. John, what are your comments? I'll leave the diagram up for you.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just echo what Jan said. The generic USM profiles, they get tailored based on specific procedural requirements, right? And that's how USM creates the structure needed for control without constraining the organizations to any one specific organizational topology. And, what occurs to me is when we have concepts like team of teams, things are changing so fast. I think Jan said this earlier that, our hobby is reorganizing, right? And if we're in that kind of world, you need this kind of flexibility. The use of the profiles by USM allows us to use any organizational structure that's needed.
Right. Absolutely. Mikko, you wanted to add into this, I think, and then I think Peter, you also did, right? So, Mikko, yours next.
Thanks, Nigel. Yeah, one interesting aspect and practical application is when you work with the multi-vendor environment or service integration and management, and then you start, the definition of a service, supported facility, and then you go, it's integration and management. So it's SIAM, it's still service management. And when you approach any SIAM situation of dissecting the things further between who specifies the work, does the governance, and then the management, and then you split the management between, as Jan said, between the manager, coordinator, operator roles. All of a sudden, this complex monster, it becomes more manageable faster. So you can approach any position in a multi-vendor environment using this exactly the same logic, because why would you do it in any other way? So tackle the complexity of SIAM with the simplicity. Tackle it with a logic, actionable bits and pieces.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Mikko. Peter, did you want to add into this one, or are you okay to?
Yeah, well, maybe just a few words. In the
Sure.
Netherlands, we did recently an activity with a user-centric organization, and we created a set of cards, and I used it as a tip card to let the organization remind how important it is to put in the management there to be able to structure any service component that you want to use. So basically, using the card game was very helpful, and I think we should bring it in English as well.
That's a great idea. I love that. You know, I'm a great one of show tell. You know, demonstrating how these things work to people by using artifacts like card games, and they are really, really good aids. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think great idea. If you want to find out more about how Peter did that, if he wants to give away his secrets, pop him a LinkedIn message. I'm sure he'll be happy to help you out with that.
Yep.
So really good. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Let's move on because we have lots of questions coming in. So the next question here is, USM differentiates between process-based and team-based steering. What are the pros and cons of each approach? And how do you decide which one to adopt? That's an interesting question. Sonke, I'm going to kick off with you, if you don't mind.
Yes. Like we have two different dimensions that we have to look when we look at this nice picture. There is just the hierarchical way, and there is the process logic that we can apply. If we break it down, it's always this, like hierarchy is always in a way there because there's always a business owner, there's always somebody who has the business, and then you have always this hierarchical organization. The process logic must come with what we said, all the components, but we can define within this, like coordination, process coordination, team coordination, we can really identify where are the hotspots, where are responsibilities overlapping, because operators, people who are doing the work, they carry both the responsibility to process something and do their work. So like with this model, like we are very easy to understand when we have conflicts, when work is performed. And we have also, as we said before, the separation of the process steering and the people steering, what it is. And all the rest must be done in the real world. Of course, the people factor will be also important, how this will be communicated and how this will be lived. But like looking from the organizational point, we can make things much clearer for all the participants in the service management.
Makes sense. Fantastic. Mikko, I'd like to jump something in quickly before we move on to Peter. Mikko, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick comment and idea what Sonke said is about the, it's small wonder that how actually when you don't, organizations that actually don't design the way they organize their work. So it's just something that happens. So you need to make this decision. In this situation, this is the stuff to you. This is the module. So here is the role that is accountable of getting stuff done. And here is the someone who's actually responsible of doing stuff. So again, the separation of duties. And it starts with the decision. You need to make the decisions. And you need to know who will escalate if there is a conflict of an operator, for example. And it might vary, but you need to design those rules.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mikko. And that's a really good advice. Peter, I hope that Mikko didn't steal everything you were going to say.
No, I just want to share something that I experienced while I was giving a a unified service management training, and it was quite a large group, about 15 people, and they become a bit talking, and there was some rumor in the training room, and I was like, "What's going on?" And some of the management were chatting with each other, and they were reading messages that they got on their phone from WhatsApp, and another group that was into incident support were looking into their ticketing system and trying to solve the priority one issue, and they both didn't know that they had their own stream of information. I was like, "What's going on here?" So the management were exchanging information in WhatsApp, and they didn't know that there was a totally process-oriented way of working at the same time going on. And so during the training, we decided to inform the management team and agree, and especially the chief information officer, to stop to work in this way, because he was mixing up the whole organization.
It would. That's how you create instant confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. John, final comments before Jan.
I like that Peter example. I'll echo what Mikko said. I think, look, there's you have to make a choice, right? There's a lot of things to consider in making that choice. You know, what do you need more structure? Do you need more scalability? Do you need more agility or autonomy? So there's a lot of considerations: culture, current challenges, the size of your organization. There are a lot of things to consider, but the point is, you need to make a choice, and USM doesn't constrain you from making that choice.
Good comment, John. Thank you. That is very important to note, everybody. Jan, final comments on this before we move on?
That image was great because it illustrates the traditional organization, which is vertical, is hierarchical, but everyone must understand that customer-driven service delivery must be overseen by someone who can oversee the whole thing. And any line manager can never oversee the whole delivery of the chain. So the result will be that the process manager in the future will be the one to control the delivery. So that means that traditional organizations, that vertical, they are going to move slowly to the left, and they will go past the tipping point. And that's when things will be getting interesting.
Yes, and we use the term interesting quite loosely at that point. Yeah. So, very good. Okay, we're just going to move on because we've got lots of questions coming in. Next question is, what specific profiles should be separated to ensure accountability and prevent conflicts of interest? Jan, just kick us off with this, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, of course, we only got three main profiles: manager, coordinator, and operator. So the process managers and the line managers are two different applications of that idea. The process coordinators and the process and the line coordinators are two different ones, and the operator is the only one who does it in both directions. So if you have managers that cover the hierarchy and the process logic, you may want to organize them in a service management office or something like that. But in smaller organizations, you will have to combine them. So combining can potentially create conflicts. For instance, if you assign someone with a profile of process manager, and he's also a line manager, then that means that in his profile of process manager, he will be in charge to some level over his fellow line coordinators. Now that's dangerous because that creates a conflict. So prevents assigning the process manager role to line managers. That's rule one. And a second thing that I would recommend is that reactive and proactive things shouldn't be mixed up. For instance, you can imagine that if you have a reactive process manager like an incident process manager, and you would assign that same person with the proactive task of being the risk manager, risk coordinator, and that would be conflicts because firefighting will always win the game. He will never get his hands on the proactive risk activities that he needs to control. So reactive, proactive, please do not mix them up.
Good point. Very, very good point. Peter, your comments, please.
Yeah, maybe shortly. If you step in this area within your organization, be sure that you have a proper set of definitions. And I've seen so often that organizations, even within one department, that they have a totally different understanding of the meaning of a role, a function, manager, coordinator. So make it clear, put it on a piece of paper and define it. And there's another thing, if you dive into accountability and responsibility, it is very clear in English, but in the Dutch language, we often use one word. And I noticed the same for my Norwegian colleagues. So be sensitive about that as well.
Yeah, very good point, Peter. Very good point. John, final comments on this one?
Well, I think Jan mentioned some things that are consistent with some of the ITIL guidance or practice guides, like avoiding roles with competing priorities or the need to combine roles in smaller organizations. But I think USM adds, specific examples that are helpful, like the danger of prioritizing incidents over risk management, or the social dynamics of authority, which Jan talked about. Like when a line coordinator who's a process manager oversees other line coordinators, he mentioned that, how that can lead to resentment. So USM provides some additional guidance that I think is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, John. We've got lots and lots of questions stacking up here. So we're going to move forward to the next. We're going to skip over a question or two if you guys don't mind. But a first live question that we want to take from our audience is, why don't more organizations adopt this whole concept? It seems the way to go for integration, interaction, and collaboration in and between organizations. I think this is a great question. So panelists, hands up if you don't mind. Mikko, you want to fire us off with this to begin with?
I think one thing that we are not, especially in the IT service management market, is because there is more money to be made on the technology side.
True. Yeah, that is a good point, actually. Sonke, I'm going to move to you next.
Yes, people love the new things, but adopting the new things and getting to a new way of thinking is a challenge. So USM is very simple and logic, but it also means that you have to throw over some of your beliefs. Like, I can see myself that things that I took as a truth in service management maybe have to be rethink. And this is a process. And we see that the market likes this, wants this, and there are early adopters. But as with the sheep, it's always that there must be some motion, that people get a little bit, that see the hype that is coming up. But in the end, costs and logic must bring organizations there, that they can solve the problems with the actual practices and methods they did so far. And that's what the market is realizing. But it takes time. Change is a year-long activity.
True. Change takes time, absolutely. Peter, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I will keep it short, but it's like if you're in an area where people are used to speak in their local dialect, it takes an effort to move away from it and adapt a new set of wording. And that's the same with unified service management. You can still use a lot of practices that you have in your organization, but you bring in a new dimension where you agree and define and bring in a more kind of enterprise way of thinking and working. And that is the beauty of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jan?
To finish it, I think the answer to this question should address the immaturity in the market, because customers are immature and providers are keeping them immature. The second one is that, as addressed, you can make money by creating chaos. Business complexity has been the best business model ever. And the third reason, people simply didn't learn this at school. They learned all the bits and the pieces. They never learned to think for themselves in a systematic way. So system thinking is new, and it takes a real effort to learn the new thinking of USM compared to what you have been learning in the push market of ITIL.
Yeah, Jan, everything you've just said is right. And I'm going to add something else to that. They also They just don't know. Okay?
No.
Simple as that.
No.
They just aren't aware that there's a better way of doing it because they're not being told that there's a better way of doing it, which for the benefit of everybody watching this webinar, this is what we're doing today. Yeah, there is a better way of doing it. It is much more simple. And if you start to investigate for yourself and start to look at it, you'll realize that the simplicity of USM makes so much sense. Okay. And for one second, don't for one second think it doesn't work with other frameworks. Of course it does. Okay. It really does. We've covered that in previous episodes. John, you want to quickly add to this?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is changing the status quo isn't easy, right? And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, you're right. It's a disruptor. Okay, changing the status quo is right, and there's a big financial element to this as well for many companies. You know, that they'd start to look at this and think, you know, but actually, when you start to work it out, if you really solved all these problems, you wouldn't be spending anywhere near as much money. Yeah, but you'd be making a lot more. So there we go. All right, next live question we've got. People process technology is now peppered with data. Good point. So what are orgs doing to add data in the above? Jan?
The answer is add data to the above. And that seems to be a simpler answer than you might realize, because it doesn't change the system. This session is about how system thinking is applied to the organization, and data is not an essential component. You can create any organization without any data if you want to. Of course, data will help you analyze and do or whatever, but it's not an essential component because you can simply do without. Just like money. Money is not an essential component in an organization for the system. The system can do completely without money. Just look at a non-profit organization and you have got your proof. So data is very beneficial, of course, but it's not one of the essential components of the system.
Yeah. Jan, I agree with you completely. Makes perfect sense. Anybody else want to jump in with that? Mikko?
What he said, obviously. But
Obviously.
in addition, and if you go into, you need to approach it from the principles, which we are talking here, and the practices. And when you go into practices side of people, processes, and technology, in the practical side, you do something, data happens either in a good quality or bad quality, hopefully in a better quality. So that's adding the data into mix. But again, it's, as Jan mentioned, it's another aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It definitely doesn't change the systems thinking approach, and it definitely doesn't change the people process technology approach either. Okay. It also doesn't change the governance management, you know, it doesn't change any of that. It is an add-on for sure. And there are indeed frameworks around even that you can use if you have big data issues, how you can get the best out of your big data. You know, those kind of things are definitely all in there, but it doesn't change what we're talking about here, the fundamentals. Okay, thanks everybody. Right, what is the difference between systems thinking and enterprise architecture approach? If there's a big overlap, this is interesting, okay? Why are you introducing relatively uncommon terms instead of established enterprise architecture? So I'm going to start off with Jan, and then we're going to move to Peter.
First of all, I'm running into many people that call themselves enterprise architects, and except for one or two, they all are enterprise IT architects.
Yeah.
So most people mistake enterprise architecture for IT architecture, enterprise-wide. That is not the same. System thinking is not about IT. It's about delivering the performance of any system. It can be anything. It can be a legal consultant, it can be a municipality without any IT or whatever. So it's very, very different. And then again, architecture is meant to analyze and describe the way a system moves. It doesn't do anything. The top architecture that it should be based on is the operating model. And the operating model is what we discussed in terms of system thinking of the service organization. The enterprise is most often not based on an architecture that covers the operating model. It covers some abstract description of how business analysis in terms of data-driven stuff is going. Well, these are absolutely very different They should be overlapping, but there's way too few overlap, little overlap.
Excellent, thank you. Peter, did you want to add to this as well, or?
Yeah, well, maybe just to emphasize also that the whole technical element that you see in a terminology related to architecture is maybe also a good reason to look at it from a system thinking point of view, because you want to emphasize on the organization part. And even within the Netherlands, there is the Dutch government reference architecture organization with a model of 5 levels. And if you dive into that model, most of the people with an architectural background dive into the application, technology, information layer, and they totally forget about the fundamental layer and the organizational layer. And so also to come back to this question, like, why do we emphasize on system thinking? We want to move away from technology.
Good point.
Okay,
let's move on. We've got lots of questions coming up. So the next one is, if you structure people and process as well, is data not just the outcome of those two interpreted by people to enrich it?
I think this is a repetition of what we have been discussing. Data is not an essential component. Data can be added. It can be useful to analyze stuff, whatever. The system itself isn't changed. So I don't understand this question.
Okay. Yeah, I think I understand, because based on the previous question that we had, where everything's peppered with data, would we add data to that organizational, to that structure? I don't think that we do. I think that yes, data can be an outcome of some of these things, and yes, how you interpret it is going to enrich it. Possibly, it may detract from it. So, Sonke, you wanted to touch, save me from my own incompetence here.
No, I would just give another picture, like to make it understandable. So, like, let's see data in an organism, like a system or is an organism. So data is the blood. It flows everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere. And if it's not there, you're mostly dead. Yeah, so like data is there, everything, but we are talking about the system, that brings the blood from A to B to the right place in the most efficient way. And that's, maybe there is this misconcept that we need all these components, but it's just another dimension, the data, from my point of view, just to give my 50 cents.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, John, to add into this.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is I love the blood analogy. and I would add that it's people, process, and tools is what creates data, not just people and process, right?
Yep. True. Good point. Absolutely. All right, let's go. I think we've got some more live questions here. So basically, you should revise the whole business model. But how, if money is not an essential component? So, Jan, I'm going to ask you to answer this, because I think that the explanation of why money isn't an essential component was misunderstood a little bit there.
Well, the only thing I said is money is not an essential component, because it doesn't. It's not necessary for the system to function. You can create the same system without any money by not asking someone to pay for whatever you do or to contribute in another way. So the essential components are the people, the things they do, the process, and the stuff they use, that technology or other means that they use to produce anything of value. So money is not an essential element of that. You can just imagine a non-profit organization and they don't make any money. They maybe spend some money for out-of-pocket costs and that's it. So it's not essential.
No, you're right.
For the system, to understand how the system works.
Correct. And I think you've got to look at this in terms of systems thinking, everybody.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, you have to look at this in the context of systems thinking, not in terms of, our business is going to go bankrupt if we don't have any money, or you don't consider money important. Of course, money is important, but that's not what we're talking about. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Okay, everybody. Unfortunately for today, we have run out of time for our show. We have come up to the hour. So what I'm going to do, if with your patience, is go and do the closing comments with everybody. And I'd like to begin with Jan and just maybe give us a little bit of insight, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I think anybody interested in system thinking, just keep the two laws, number 1 and number 2, that we started out with. Keep them in mind, and look at how your organization is composed of essential components, how they work together, and never ignore any of these essential components if you want to create a sustainable improvement for what you're doing.
Yep.
And
Couldn't agree more.
Check out Russell Eckhoff.
Yeah. Check out Russell Eckhoff. Absolutely. Peter, your final comments.
Well, I just think that it's important to start this discussion also internally in your organization, and that you need to rethink together, like, do we have a system, and do we apply system thinking? Most of the people are running after their mailbox, and so as a task for everybody, start and speak up and create this interaction.
Good point, Peter. And when you realize that you don't have a system, or it's definitely not very well architected, get hold of us on the panel here. And there's a bunch of folks who will be able to help you to get started. Look back at all the other episodes as well. John, your closing remarks, please.
Well, I've said it in the last session too. Seek first to understand, right? Understand how the USM method works. I think once you do, it's really not that radical. It's based on really a lot of proven principles, but you need to take the time and you need to open up your mind to allow yourself to understand it. And that, for many people, that's the hardest thing.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. Really is the hardest for people to just get their minds around that change. Okay, start looking at things in a different way. Mikko, your final closing remarks, please.
Yeah, I agree strongly with John here. So stop whatever you're doing, take a breath, rethink. If you're continuously firefighting, it's a good sign that something is off with your system in your organization. Stop, breathe, rethink. Take a time to think, actually. Stop there.
Yep. Very, very good advice. Absolutely great advice. And Sonke, final remarks, please.
Yes, just to do a little bit marketing also for the USM book. Like you will find, if you want to do step-by-step design thinking, then you can read the USM book. It has 10 chapters, and like each chapter will put light on this design thinking of this special area of service management. At the end, you will have a clear concept and guideline how to implement enterprise service management based on USM and a system thinking way.
Yep. Fantastic. Sonke, thank you. I just want to say thanks to everybody on the panel firstly, for contributing all of your time and effort over the last 6 episodes. It's been wonderful. It's really, really appreciated, I think, by the community as a whole and by us at APMG too. And of course, all the audience that have been spending their time to watch these. And obviously, if you don't forget, you will be able to watch the recorded version as well later on. So thank you, panelists. 2025 is a new year, so watch this space, everybody. Okay, we will be doing more. Okay, don't forget, over on our website, you can search for the answers to over 3,000 questions now, which is an enormous amount. Okay, it's a great free learning resource, connects you with experts from around the world. And you can also listen to the audio versions of the shows on your preferred podcast platform. So looking ahead, as we close off for the holiday season now, we'd just like to take this opportunity to wish you and all of our viewers around the world a wonderful, peaceful, happy, festive season. We will be back in 2025 with an exciting new lineup of events. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn. Take a look at our website for more information. And thank you very much once again for joining. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.